Welcome, my beautiful friends. This is a significant day that we must remember and we must honor because your boy, you can't see it if you're not watching the video recording, but your boy has got on a long sleeve shirt. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but let me tell you, when your boy breaks out the long sleeve shirt, then you know there is some shifting going on. Okay? The seasons are changing. The energy is changing. And that is signified by the physical representation of the long sleeve t-shirt. Now, this isn't like an on and off switch. It's more of a spectrum. It's more of a gradient. And I don't know when you're watching this or when you are engaging with these lessons and what order, and I don't know any of that. I don't really care. But I will tell you from my perspective, I'm doing these week by week. And so, this is lesson 19, by the way. And the title for this lesson is Dr. Movement, the Law of Motion, which I do feel like is quite pertinent because, as you will see within this theme of Dr. Movement, within this law of motion, all of these cycles and the changes of energy and the rhythms and, really everything that we've built up leading to this point, it all has to do with movement because everything is always in motion when it comes to the tangible physical manifestation of the intangible unmanifest. Okay? So that's one thing that is always key to remember, even though at a certain level, when we start to talk about this, you can't even call it other element because it's just the source component. And even the component, see, this is where, again, language we miss it when we start trying to use language to put conditions onto something that is inherently unconditional. But, we can do our best. And it's not to say that it's a bad thing to attempt because, the finger can still point to the moon. You don't have to mistake the finger for what it is pointing at, but the finger can still be a signifier. We can still use these symbols to point to something beyond. But either way, the complementary opposites, the yin and the yang, the hot, the cold, the masculine, the feminine, this kind of the pendulum that life is continuously swinging back and forth. You can even say life, death, even though that's just two halves of the same sphere. But then underlying that duality is the non-duality. And even, and again, this is where you can get just lost in these things, but even underlying, because duality implies non-duality. Again, the principle of the complementary opposites. And then even non-duality, when you say non-duality, there's still an implication of duality. Just like when you say manifest, there's an implication of the unmanifest. And the unmanifest implies the manifest. So then even like beyond that, that's where in Taoism, they just say it's the Tao that cannot be spoken. Whereas it's just beyond the duality. Okay? So from that place, in a sense, there is no motion because everything is just all that there is. Okay? But then once we have the duality, now we have continuous motion. Now things are always in motion. Okay? So that was the main point I wanted to preface that with. And like I said, this changing of the seasons and the changing of the energy, because as I was saying, I'm doing these lessons week by week. And, even from, this is lesson 19, and even from, going from lesson 1 to lesson 19, that's 19 weeks of development for me. It's just 19 weeks of life, really. And that's almost 5 months. Really, yeah, damn. It's almost 5 months that I've been doing this course week by week. And so obviously, as you can imagine, that's almost half a year. So we're going through these seasons now. We're going through these changes. And I can recall, I don't know exactly what lesson, but it was, just a span of time where there's just this fire burning very, very hot. Okay. And that's like peak summertime. And now we're transitioning into this fall period where now this energy, it's more of the best way I can describe it is, when you put a bunch of like fresh, I wouldn't say fresh wood, but when you put a bunch of kind of small pieces of wood or, things that just burn really easily and really quickly and really, just produce a big flame, that's like summertime for me. And then this fall time is like, if we were to get a little poetic, it's, you're camping and it's towards the end of the night. You're going to be going to bed soon, but you're not quite there yet. But because it's close, you don't want to just throw new wood on the fire and just keep shit going because you're about to leave. So you're just kind of letting it do its thing. There's still flame. There's still a noticeable flame, but things are definitely kind of quieting down a little bit, and you can see more of the embers, which are still, extremely hot. The embers are still burning. But things are winding down a little bit. And that's, if I had to metaphorically describe the energy that is being presented here, that's what I would say. Okay. And I go into that because it does all relate to this concept of the law of motion or doctor movement. Because just like these other doctors that we've been through, so we began with Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and now Dr. Movement, there are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual components to each one of those doctors. And ultimately, for me, especially when it comes to Dr. Movement, because this is one kind of like Dr. Diet, where it can be so easy to get lost in all the complexities of like, you got to do this exercise and you got to do this at this time and then do this at this time. And you got to stretch this way and you got to do all these things. And it just, again, you can go so crazy into all of the different nuances and all the different modes and methods and scientific studies and this and that and all that shit, which is cool. I go there and I've been there, but going through all of that and getting lost in all of the complexities, and where I feel like I really shine and what I attempt to bring through in these teachings is really getting a solid grasp of the principles that can then tie everything together to teach you how to move from that place of centeredness. That's a key term there, of centeredness, so that all of the movement that stems from that place is right for you. Because just like Dr. Diet, just like Dr. Quiet, there's not one program, there's not one kind of prescription that is going to be all encompassing in all circumstances, in all different times. Okay. It's going to be very individual to you. I don't know what kind of exercise that you need right now. Okay. So the best thing that I can give you is to teach you how to think, to teach you how to move from that place of centeredness, so that no matter what you do, no matter what kind of movement that you engage with, and remember, when we say movement, this is physical movement, mental movement. So how are my thoughts moving? Okay. And then emotional movement. How's the energy of my emotions moving? And they're all tied together. And then at the core of it, at least from my perspective, kind of underlying and transcending it all is the spiritual movement, which is ideally coming from that place of centeredness, because then everything that you do is right for you in that time. Okay? And so the way that I'm going to approach this is just like Dr. Diet, where, you know, I give you these big principles and then I'll give you some practical shit. I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay? So I'm going to kind of start big and then we'll bring in the scope more and more as we go here. And it's not complicated, bro. It is not complicated, because just in the same way that your body knows what it needs as far as the nutrition, the diet of food and information and emotions at a moment to moment basis, the same thing is true when it comes to movement. And so ultimately what I find to be the most helpful place to operate from when it comes to Dr. Movement, just like these other ones, and which again, you'll see why we're just getting to these more kind of surface level things all the way here at lesson, 17, 18, 19, and then 20, we're going to Dr. Happiness. Because once you have that foundation of all the other shit that we've covered, this stuff is so easy. It's so easy. And I say easy not in the sense that, you're actually going to have to do some work. You're actually going to have to do that inner work to continue to remind yourself and to reorient yourself to that centered place. So that's where the work does come in. But coming from that place, it's effortless. Okay? So you use the effort, and I'm gonna say this again. This is a fucking clip right here. Use effort to establish the structure that allows you to flow. I'll say it again. Use effort, use your will to establish the structure, to create the program that allows you to surrender to the flow of life and whatever is being called upon within the moment. Okay? So you need kind of both of those ends there. You need the structure so that you can allow for the flow. But you don't want too much structure because it inhibits the flow. We've talked about this before many times, the same principle. So when it comes to creating the structure, this is where, yes, having a program set in place, something that you can be consistent with, something that is very precise. Do this like this, do this like that, do this many reps, do this many sets, do this exercise, take this amount of rest, all that stuff. That's the structure. And that's what we want. We want that structure, but we don't want that structure to get locked into the structure. We want that structure to provide a foundation so that we can just allow things to unfold. We can just allow our body to take its whatever course that is the most ideal for it within the given circumstances, life situation, your current goals, whatever case that might be. Okay. So that's like big principle shit. So the way that we do that is literally everything that we've already done. And so when it comes to Dr. Movement, just in the same way with Dr. Quiet, little Dr. Quiet and Dr. Diet, where we were like, okay, Dr. Diet, we need to do the 4-day rotation diet, and we're going to pick these certain foods, and we're going to start swapping things out and basically create this program. And if you remember all the way back to, I don't remember what lesson it was, maybe like lesson 7 or something, where we built out your perfect week and we looked at the 4 doctors for the first time. It all comes back together now. The spiral of evolution, y'all. It all comes back together now. Now we're just kind of operating at this little bit of a higher level now. But now, when are you, what times of day are most ideal for you to do some movement? What does that movement look like? What days during the week are you going to do that? Are you going to go to the gym? And in Paul Chek's teachings, he talks about the 5 program design principles. Basically, the 5 things that you need to consider when designing an effective program for yourself, or if you're a coach, for somebody else. So you've got time. So how much time is available? Willingness. How willing is someone? Are you actually willing to engage in the program? Resources, which is, what you got, exercise equipment. Are you going to go to the gym? Like, what does that look like? What do you have available for you? Energy. How much energy do you have? And this is a lot of predicated on the other doctors, your doctor diet, how you're fueling yourself, doctor quiet, how you're managing your recovery so that you have adequate energy. And then the 5th one is finances. So, do you have the finances to go get equipment or to hire a coach or a personal trainer or whatever that looks like? So again, you've got time, energy, willingness, resources, and finances. Okay? So when you're looking at your program design, you want to consider all of those things. And now what I'm most likely going to do, now that I'm talking through it on this podcast, in the actual lesson, I'll kind of outline this more, and we'll get a little deeper into the actual program design and how you kind of modify those different variables. But basically, it's just getting clear on, okay, what do I have available to me in all those different areas? And then what do I actually want out of an exercise program? Because obviously that's going to determine, just like if you're building a map, you need to have 2 basic things. You need to know where you're going, and you need to know where you're at, because then you can draw the line. Then you can map out the route that you're going to take to get there. So the 5 program design principles is like where you're at, and then whatever your vision, and this ties in, ideally, like this goes to your life types and your key processes, like those intentions, all of that ties in, because ultimately what your movement is going to look like is going to be dependent on what's your intention and what's the tangible result that you are moving towards. All right? Because if your goal, if your dream, if your intention is to be a high level, high performing human being, a high performing athlete, then your training is going to look a lot different than if your intention is, I want to support my family, I want to have fun with my kids, and I want to be able to pursue my passions, whatever those may be. So it's like, in one, the kind of the training is the process, is your life. And the other, the training is a supplement to help you do the other things that you love to do as part of your life. Okay? So you got to get clear on that, because that's obviously is going to determine, how many days a week are you training? What kind of movements are you doing? And even before all of that, when it comes to doctor movement, it's really like all this shit, bro. It's just consistency. Like if you just had to strip away all complexity of anything, you don't need to worry about any of that shit. You just need to focus on one thing. And that one thing is consistency, bro. So how can you create the structure that allows you to be the most consistent? So, ideally this means that whatever you are doing as it pertains to the movement that you are engaging in, it's something that you can be consistent with. Okay. So that's why the best exercise truly is the exercise that you will do consistently. So maybe, if you're going from doing nothing, maybe going for a walk or going for a bike ride, 30 minutes a day. And if you wanted like a set in stone rule to act as a guideline to follow, you need at least 30 minutes a day of continuous-ish movement, okay? 30 minutes of day with that intention of movement, okay? And again, if you're coming from doing nothing, then doing some walking or riding a bike or, even like just playing with your kids, whatever that looks like. But it's the intention of I'm getting some movement in. And that's a starting place. And if that's where you can start and be consistent with, yes, start there. You don't need to worry about going to the gym. You don't need to worry about, complicated program or any of that shit. Now, obviously, if the goal is I want to be like a high level athlete and really push my physical, mental, emotional capacity to the highest level possible, now that's going to be a more involved program. But if your dream is big enough and there's enough passion and willingness behind it, then you're going to do what you got to do to align to that. Okay. But even still, because I've made this mistake, you don't want to go, off the wall and start, training 14 times a week, doing 2-a-days every single day just because you can. Because you can lead to the other end. So this is where the concept of the minimal effective dosage. What's the minimum effective dosage? And that's, for me, I like both ends of the spectrum here. And I'll tell you why. I like at times to push myself as hard as I can, not necessarily because it's what's the best thing to achieve a specific result, but more so that I know what that upper limit is. And from a physical standpoint, it may not necessarily lead to the best gains that you can get, but from a mental emotional standpoint, that kind of movement could be exactly what you need, because in a sense, it kind of becomes this initiation. And, especially as men, I'm speaking from a guy's perspective here, obviously. As men, we don't necessarily have like this set in stone rite of passage, okay? We don't, women, they have their period, and then most women go through pregnancy and childbirth. And that in itself is a built-in rite of passage. Men don't really have that. Okay. We have, especially in America, there's like, if you look back at, or even nowadays, if you go to more indigenous tribes, they have more set in stone things. But in America, especially, we don't have that. And it's kind of like the opposite, where it's like everything is so kind of laid out. Like the path is so just do this, do this, do this, just follow the path, hold your hand, here you go. And so we don't have any of that. And that's why, in my opinion, you got a bunch of little pussy boys running around and just adult looking bodies. Okay. So going through a process, through physical training, whether that's, in the gym, like strength training, like I've done, or whether that's a more combative sport, or really anything. Like I personally believe anything could turn into a rite of passage if it is something. Remember the hero's journey. Like this is your sword. Okay. And you've got to learn how to wield the sword. You got to learn how to use the sword. And that in itself, learning how to use the weapon is the initiation, is the rite of passage to be able to go on the journey and to slay the dragon, to save the princess, to get the treasure, whatever that is in your life, externally and internally. Okay. And so at times, the goal isn't necessarily, I just want to achieve this specific physical result. The goal might be, I just want to see, I need to push myself as hard as I can right now. I need to see the limits of where that is for me right now. Because then you have that baseline. Okay. So that's why I like that end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum is in a sense, the total opposite, where I only am going to do exactly what I need to do to produce a stimulus to get the result that I'm after in the most effective, efficient way possible. And currently for me in training, that's where I'm at. And that's not to say like there aren't times where I'm pushing it, like pushing my limit, but I'm not really pushing my limit just for the sake of pushing the limit. It's more so I'm pushing the limit because this is part of a structured program that is going to help me to most effectively and efficiently achieve the result that I'm after. Okay. And again, the same is true in many different areas of your life. If you're willing to pursue that thing and willing to push yourself as hard as you can at different periods of time, and even doing it in different areas of your life, which again, I find that if you're passionate about something, if there's that drive behind it, and ultimately, which I adopt this approach in my life, where if I know that there's something that I really want or I really want to develop in myself, I will purposely make my life more difficult. I'll purposely put myself in a situation where there's no safety net. There's no way out. Okay. Cause real life shit, there's no safety net. There's no way out. You fucking figure it out. Okay. And so I like to put myself intentionally in those situations. I mean, that's why I left my parents' house when I was 18. I wasn't forced to. It was just like, I know that I need this. And that's where really tapping into the heart, because the heart, it's most likely going to lead you to some of the scariest places you've ever been. And logically, it might be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is stupid. This makes zero sense. But in your heart, this is the call. This is the call. The hero's journey is coming full circle, y'all. The hero's journey. This is the call. And that's the law of motion. That's the law of movement. Sometimes you need to move. You need to keep moving in order to reach that next level. And on the other side of that, sometimes being very, very still is the kind of movement, or in essence, the non-movement that is needed. Okay. So that's kind of, I kind of sprinkled in a lot of the practicalities with that. But really for me, I like the concept of spiritual movement, which is, again, coming from that place of centeredness. So we have these structures in place so that ultimately, it's kind of a pacifier. It's like this whole program. It's like this pacifier for the logical mind, so that that, okay, like I'm doing what I got to do. There's a structure in place here. And so from there, that then gives you the freedom to let go. At least, this is my experience. I have that pacifier for my logical, rational mind that wants order, that wants these structures, that wants to follow a specific program. That's all there. And because that's all there, and because it's built in a way that is open-ended in a sense, meaning it's not too rigid, then that is what provides the freedom to just surrender and just to let it go. Okay. And that's ultimately what we're looking for. Because again, your body is going to tell you what it needs. And if you set your life in a way where just movement is a natural expression of how you go about life, like for instance, if purposely you make shit so it's not so easy. And again, like if you just tap into your heart, you will get these intuitions of how to structure these different elements of your life. Because even as simple as, it's like the no workout program of, I'm going to take the stairs. I'm purposely going to, instead of just leaning over to pick that thing up, I'm going to squat down. I'm purposely going to park all the way over here, so I have to walk. Like all these little different things where you're not even really doing anything extra, but you're still getting in movement. Okay. I'm gonna give you one last thing here. The reason why I love training the Olympic lifts so much, and why as part of the program that they're essentially, it's kind of a requirement to learn the Olympic lifts, is not because I'm just stuck on the Olympic lifts. It's more so because for me, the Olympic lifts are the highest expression of movement. Like meaning that if you can perform the Olympic lifts to a proficient level, I'm talking about the snatch and the clean and jerk here. If you can perform those lifts to a proficient level, your capacity to essentially do any other kind of movement is already very high, just by extension. Whereas, like if all I did was body weight squats, and that was my only exercise program, then doing any other things outside of body weight squats might actually be pretty difficult. I mean, you'll still build a decent capacity doing some body weight squats, but trying to go sprint or trying to do, climb something or do this might be pretty difficult. On the other end of that, if you've gotten to a proficient level with the snatch and the clean and jerk, the Olympic lifts, then your ability to do a squat, your ability to lunge, your ability to do all these other things becomes very, very easy. So it's like it's a target that by aiming for that target, just focusing on the one thing, the power of the one thing, that it has the most wide-reaching effect. Okay. And again, like focusing on that structure of the Olympic lifts, focusing on the structure of the Olympic lifts gives you that freedom then to just flow with whatever else is coming. And even when it comes to injuries and shit, if you just tap in, because my professional training is in rehabilitation, like physical therapy side of things. I'm a Czech professional, so I kind of I understand the whole holistic approach when it comes to integrating all the different levels and then how to integrate that into like a physical therapy program and different assessments and all that stuff. But even with that, what I found, going back to this principle of spiritual movement, is if you just tap in to your body, and even like different injuries and things, like I've had a lot of different injuries that I've essentially rehabbed myself. If you just tap in, your body will guide you to what it needs. And sometimes it doesn't need anything. And that's like one of the tricks that we play with ourselves, where it's like we feel something, our back feels weird or our wrists start hurting, and we feel like automatically we've kind of been conditioned in this allopathic medical model, like this for that, this symptom masking approach, where if there's something that we don't feel is right, which again, that in itself, that line of thinking can fixate. Like if we feel like something needs to be fixed, that thinking that the something needs to be fixed can in itself fix the problem. It can fix it, as in make it be stuck. Okay. So even just that level of thinking. So this is where it's all integrative. But what I found is, if you just tune into your body, it's going to tell you whether that's like, yo, just rest. Because your body's very fucking smart, bro. Your body is so smart. Just rest. Just let it heal. Let it do its thing. Or it's like, no, okay, we need to push this a little bit. We need to stretch it out a little bit. Again, just play with your body. And that's where, again, part of the structure is creating structure. And this is where, when I do my warm up in the gym, it's a lot of my kind of play, where it's like, okay, let me just feel around a little bit. Let me feel into this a little bit. What is needed right now? Do I need to stretch? Do I need to move this way? So in just incorporating that time to just move your body around, it's not complicated. And create the structure that allows the flow. Okay. So I feel like that's, I gave you a nice wide encompassing, but also gave you some very specific things that you can start to implement. And ultimately, again, my intention is to really teach you how to think. If I feel like if I can teach you how to think and how to ask the right questions, then personally, I feel like I've done my job as, this kind of teacher role, just showing you these different things. Okay. So hopefully this was valuable for you. This was, my version of Dr. Movement and the law of motion. Everything's in motion. So don't try necessarily to control the motion. Create the banks so that the motion can flow through your centeredness. Those are my parting words, my friend. Have an amazing day. See you soon. Peace.